Welcome back, everyone. Let's just take a moment to sort of drop in. Just allow the mind to settle. Feel Mother Earth hold us. No effort required. Perhaps just let go thoughts. Be present. And with an invitation to set an intention for this session, I'd now like to introduce to you Dr. Laura Candiotto. Laura is an associate professor in philosophy at the Center for Ethics of the University of Pardubice. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. My Czech is not very good. Pardubice in the Czech Republic. And she's a fellow of the Intercontinental Academy on Intelligence and Artificial Intelligence. She's going to be speaking to us today. There's much more you can learn about her background, and I encourage you to check out her bio on our program page. But she's going to be speaking to us today about why we should listen more or why we should listen better. So I'm just going to turn it over to her, and I really look forward to hearing what you have to say, Laura. And it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much for this very kind introduction. Can you hear me well? Is it working? Yes? Okay, perfect. Good. So thank you very much, Upaya Center. Thank you very much, Mind and Life Europe. It is really an honor to be here, and I'm so happy to contribute to this conversation. So thank you. So I'm going to share my screen. Let me see if it works. Yes, can you see it? Yes, I guess so, because no, yeah, okay.
So Laura, what we're seeing is the whole desktop. Do you want us to only see it? Yeah.
And now? Yes?
Hold on. Yes, there we go.
Okay, perfect. So as it has been already introduced by John, the title of my presentation is Why Should I Listen More? This question is very important to me, and I would say that it is ethically relevant and has a strong existential implication. So we are going to unpack this in a moment, but first I would like to start from a personal experience, and I would like to tell you about a deep feeling of precariousness I felt last year when I went to pay a visit to a river in a nearby valley to my home place in the Italian Alps. And it was a very strong experience, because when I arrived there, I found the river like that, totally dried out, totally. And only 1 week before, the river was like that. So you see, full of life. And, you know, we were experiencing one of the hottest summer of the century, may say, or maybe on record, it was really the hottest summer in Italy and in Europe. So I was aware that many rivers were drying out all around, but I didn't expect that in high mountains. So here we are really 1,500 meters above the level of the sea. And just 1 week before, I went there just for finding some coolness, just a very short swim, not just myself, but also the dogs. I was seeing the fish that was swimming inside, the seaweeds were running with the currents. And then you see the life was gone. And yes, I say that this experience was an experience of precariousness for me, really under the threat of the climate crisis. And I started to question myself and really asking, where have the fish gone? Will they come back? And when I started to think in this manner, from a very embodied manner of suffering, I would say, I felt that this was not only my suffering, but that living beings that were inhabiting that place, the Masino River, were experiencing this suffering. And not only in that place, that was kind of a tiny valley in the Italian mountains, but in many similar places endangered by drought around the globe. And so this is the experience. And I would like to connect this experience to some reflections that I'm doing since some years, especially about the responsibility, our human responsibility towards the worlds we co-create. So here we have some keywords that we are going to unpack together now and to discuss. But for now, I want just to convey you my main questions. That is, what kind of worlds should we create? And what is our responsibility for different worlds we create? What is our responsibility in creating these worlds where the rivers are drying out and there is no place anymore for fish to live and survive? So I'm going to follow 3 tracks in this presentation, and these are number 1, 2, and 3. And the first one, I call it responsibility out of shared sentience. So I would like to speak with you a bit about what is responsibility and what kind of responsibility can unfold from our sentience of being sentient beings. The second point is about the fundamental role that love can play in listening to the place more. So point 2 and 3 are very much related because, you know, in this experience that I just told you about, this suffering that I was experiencing really was pushing me to trying to listen to the place more. And so I would like to discuss with you what this kind of listening could be. And this is my thesis, that this would be an ethical opportunity, listening to the place more, but also an environmental responsibility, namely to answer to these problematic issues of having rivers drying out. So before doing this, we needed to explore our conceptual framework that comes from inaction. And in particular, I'm working in Inactive Ethics. And Inactive Ethics is, I can summarize it for you in this manner with some key features of an inactive conceptualization of ethics or moral agency. So Inactive Ethics is situated and embodied. So really our moral actions, our moral concerns emerge out of our feeling experience and being in a situation. So I would say, and here there is this concept that I'm working in, that there is a sort of responsibility or responsiveness that emerge out of our embodiment and situatedness. And it is a practice-oriented approach. So it is not a way of doing ethics as following certain universal principles that should be applied to situations, but it's more like a bottom-up approach that starts from the experience, being there and being responsive to the experience. And this still is a strong level of responsibility. And so I'm starting to work on what I call, with a German colleague, Martin Wey, called ethics of sense-making. So there are different manners in which we can make sense of ourselves, the others, the worlds we inhabit, and how we enact certain worlds. And we can be responsible towards how we make sense. There are better and worse sense-making activities, I would say. And today I'm referring mostly about this, the climate situation, but this could be extended to other contemporary issues as well. And here you see some papers that have been published on inactive ethics in the last years. There is also an important journal special issue, and I would like also to mention this year's summer school topic, the Mind and Life Europe summer school topic, that is caring for life, sentience and responsibility in critical times. So we are really working on this together at Mind and Life Europe. So let's go a bit deeper into what an inactive ethics is. And the main reference point here is, of course, Francisco Varela's book, Ethical Know-How. Of course, also the embodied mind. There are important chapters there, but today I would refer mostly to this book, especially for focusing on certain qualities of this approach to ethics. And the first one is the one that Francisco called spontaneity. So this kind of moral agency is spontaneous in a manner that by being there in the situation and feeling what is going on, a certain sort of responsiveness to the situation can unfold naturally. But this natural responsiveness to something or somebody who is calling you, who is calling for your attention, here it's starting to use this metaphor of listening and calling and answering, that for me is really a metaphor of what responsibility means, right? This can be trained. And so this is also very important for Francisco, stressing that is an ethical expertise, this ethical know-how, that we can train in different manner. So there is a strong reference to contemplative practices as well. But I would like also to stress the tradition of exemplarism in virtue ethics. So the idea that there can be some exemplars, some wise women and men that can inspire us to do better. And so this is really a model of training, developing our virtues or our qualities to unfold. And well, again, in contemporary philosophy, we call this perfectionism, that this is a kind of a very classical heritage from ancient Greek philosophy, actually from Aristotle. The idea that we can train ourselves in order to develop our potentialities, in order that they can flourish, and this flourishing really will make the person happy, kind of this eusen, this good life. But it is important that there is this developmental approach in a way, in this training and mastery that should go always together with this really being there in the present moment and allow our spontaneous ethical know-how to unfold. But we needed to train ourselves in order that this spontaneous ethical know-how can unfold. So this is the first couple of concepts that are really crucial in Francisco's approach. And then the following is the one of readiness for action. So really, by being there in the situation, really this responsibility unfolds as being ready to do something. And in this, we can find this spontaneity. And here we find two concepts that might be a bit difficult to grasp at the moment, but really has to do also with what John was saying before, right? So about this freedom from an idea of a self that is fixed, that is substantial, that is, we are just stuck to it. Francisco tried to really go beyond this view of the self, talking about micro worlds and micro identities. So these micro identities that unfold in the real situation, in this co-institution of the situation itself and ourselves and the others. So as John said, self and world are co-instituted in this fundamental interdependence of making sense of ourselves, the others, and the situation. And so we can call this also selfless selves. That is another expression that has been used by Francisco in other papers. I really would like to offer you a way of grasping it for now and for our ethical purpose as a kind of a person-centered approach. So instead of focusing on the self, we can really focus on the on personhood as something that is situational and relational and intrinsically interdependent, that really unfolds out of a situational, relational situation. But still there is some grounding, because sometimes even when we speak mostly in continental philosophy about this situational dimension of personhood, it seems that really we cannot get to anything kind of stable in terms of a kind of continuity, right? And so I would like to stress that, at least in how I understand Inactive Ethics, we can have kind of a solid and flexible ground that is our feeling body. So it's really the body as the ground of our experience. And this really allows us to develop an ethical naturalism that is not reductionist, right? So really the body with all its vulnerability and precariousness, as are we going to speak about it in a moment. But let me read this quote by Francisco. In the inactive approach, reality is not a given. It is perceiver dependent, not because the perceiver constructs it as he or she pleases, but because what counts as a relevant word is inseparable from the structure of the perceiver. So here we can really find this fundamental embodiment of perception. Embodiment, namely really also in this feeling dimension, what counts to the subject, what are her or his concerns, her values, her existential meanings, and it's out of them that really a specific micro words unfold. And so the reality is not a given, it's not just out there, but it is created, but not as a construction, just as merely a projection for Francisco, I would say, but it really comes out of this fundamental embodied nature of the perceiver. And for stressing this role of this feeling dimension in world constitution, I would like also to read this other quote that comes from Solomon. And he said, I want to introduce a conception of subjectivity, a worldview which harbors no pretense of a single reality. It is a perspective in which values are real, and they are not just in our minds, but out there in our world. So here I stop it, because in a way, it is really important to stress that from an ethical perspective, understanding that there is no a fixed self or a fixed reality does not mean to simply accept nihilism or relativism in a manner that there are no values anymore, and so that there is indifference. Who cares? On the contrary, care and really mattering becomes even more important, because it is through our action of sense making that we make sense of our worlds and of ourselves. And this is what Solomon called that there is an existential emphasis. So it is within this subjective viewpoint, with its tolerance for differences and all-important self-concern, its existential emphasis on my life and its concern for what is of value, that the passions play a central role. So here is really stressing that the true passions, or if you want, we can say true affectivity or true emotions, we can really get to this fundamental existential meaning that are at the ground of our constitution of reality. And here really it is important to stress that this operation is always shared among living beings that are sharing a place. So here I wanted to stress that world making is not a projection because of you. And it is really important, this because of you, because I'm not alone in making this world. If I would have been alone, I would say, oh yes, this is just maybe just my imagination, my fantasies. But since we are doing this together, your reality is out there and is calling me, is calling for my care, my attention, my responsibility, that this world is our world, that it reflects our existential meanings. So here really I bring this idea of some words that we co-create. So what we can call participatory words making. So in the theory of inaction, we are speaking about participatory sense making. But since making sense is also creating the world that we inhabit, we can say that it is not just participatory sense making, but is participatory world making. So this means that participatory sense making is not just social understanding or synchronic interaction, right? So a new theory of social understanding beyond mind reading or other theories, a more embodied idea of what does it mean to really sharing meanings. But I would like to stress that here the dimension is more, I would say even more fundamental, because we are creating the worlds that we inhabit. And from an ethical point of view, this is very important, because if we extend this perspective on worlds, we can really understand better why we have a responsibility towards the worlds that we create together, right? So I would say that we should be responsible towards the meanings that we put forth, because these create different worlds, better and worse. And there is also a reciprocal relation. So it is not only from meanings to words, but also from words to meanings. Because if I'm going to inhabit a certain word, this is going to shape my ways of understanding, my feelings, my habits, my ways of behaving. So it is circular, the relationship between meanings and words. So there is this special issue on constructivist foundations where Ezequiel Di Paolo replied to one of my papers, but the point is that it came out from this discussion that the main point is not focusing just in the in-between, you know, the cooperation between me and you, creating a meaning together or creating a world together. The point is really also making our vision broader and really focusing also on the all around, that this all around is situatedness, of course, the situation that we are inhabiting, but for me, from an ethical point of view, is also the responsibility towards the world that we are inhabiting, also from an ethical and political point of view, right? So the focus, if I come back to my experience with this Masino River, was really being able of being aware of what was going on all around. So not only the relationship that I was having with the river, but seeing that there were also so many other beings that were suffering out of this drought. So this has an important implication that is quite crucial for me. So when we speak about world making, okay, we have kind of this, it seems like a positive and constructive fashion of creating something new. But in certain situations, I would say that we need also to consider that we need to dismantle certain words. So we can speak about word making, but also word breaking. So we need to break certain words. because they are not good, they are not working well, right? And so, well, again, in this book by Francisco Varela, he spoke a bit about these breakdowns, but more like as this opportunity for reflection and analysis. So when we are in a kind of an habitual behavior, there can be some experiences that break down our words, and this really induce new reflection and new intuition. Like when I came to this river, I noticed that it was dried up, and this made me think, made me questioning myself, etc. Yes, this is the fundamental breaking down of our habits as an opportunity for discovery that has been stressed also by the pragmatist. John Dewey, for example, spoke about this a lot. For me, would mean also more practically the need to break down certain words. So not just if certain information just out of chance give us the opportunity to change our mind, but really having this responsibility towards breaking certain words. We can speak about this a bit more. Let's come back to the main question of this talk, that is, what is our responsibility for the different words we create? So as I said, I have 3 threads to follow to reply to this question. So the first one is focusing on sentience. And this is like an offering, offer you a perspective on sentience as this ability to feel pleasure and pain as something different from a property. You know, usually the questions is, does this being, or no, maybe we can say, okay, could we say that a river is sentient, or could we say that a dog is sentient? So it seems like that sentience is a property that something possess or do not possess. And the point is really assessing if this is the case. If we start from this more participatory perspective that is grounded in interdependence, I think that we can conceive sentience in an interactive way. So a way of dealing with a situation or inhabiting a place. So sentience, like really this ability to feel the situation and to sensing the situation, and the ability of sense making, actually. And we can also conceive this as shared aliveness. And this comes from this work by Andreas Weber that I find very inspiring for trying to understand sentience out of this concept of property. And so if sentience is something that has to do with an ability and with a practice of inhabiting a world in a certain manner, we can think about the cultivation of our sentience. So this is very important, because you remember at the beginning I said that we needed to find this balance between spontaneity and this training, this development of our virtues. So here we can really try to think about this development of our shared sentience, and finding this embodied dimension of responsibility. Because, as I said, my point is really finding a way for understanding how responsibility can unfold out of our sentience. And this is the second point. In order that this can happen, my proposal is really focusing on really the inhabiting a place in a certain manner. So it was not by chance that I had this experience with a nearby river, a river that I really like to visit very often. I care for this river. I can say that even I love this river. What does it mean? It means, and this has to do with the work of Freya Matthews, an Australian philosopher, it means that I became native to this place. So this is quite important, because the conceptualization here is that I can grow out of a place. So remember again this idea that identities are not fixed, that we have these micro-identities that are situational, and these micro-identities also unfolds out of certain natural places and in the relationship that I can have with a river, right? So the point here is that if I can inhabit that place with love, I can really grow with it and start to build meanings out of this relationship. So here Freya Matthews talk about a dialogical encounter with a place. I cannot go deeper into this view for time reasons, but the point here is that we can have some sort of dialogical interaction through love. So really, when you love a place, you can really start to listen more, actually. So here really we get to my main point. So I'm really moving into this shared sentience for really finding this quality of loving a place by becoming its native, and this is the opportunity for listening to the place more, to be attentive towards it, and so developing this responsibility. So let me just say a few things about love, because I'm using this word, and of course we can speak for weeks about what is love in the philosophy of love. Here, since I'm holding this dialogical account of love and responsibility that is very much grounded in listening, noticing some calls, replying to these calls, answering to it, so responsibility as answering, I want to stress that love can be really enacted in a way that does not objectify the beloved. And this is a usual problem that is discussed in the philosophy of love, how much love objectify the beloved. Here we can, and here I take the inspiration from Lucie Rigaret, a French philosopher, that she said, j'aime à toi, not je t'aime, j'aime à toi. So I love to you instead of I love you. And this too is really the space of distance, the space that enables participatory sense making, the space that allows to create our shared reality, our shared words, right? Because they are not already there. So there is this space for creation. But this space is also the space of vulnerability, right? Because if it is not fixed, we are really opening ourselves to the other and also acknowledging our uncertainties. So here in this other paper that I published with Hanne de Jager, Love in Between, we were talking about these dialectical tensions between openness and closure, listening to and transgression, meaning like just jumping into the words of the other in order to understand better, to listening better, to listening more. And when we hold this vulnerability that comes from this meeting with otherness, we can say, we can find also the precarity of our existence. And here really I would like to come back to my experience. The Masino River without water anymore, without fish, without seaweed, without the dogs that can just jump in it for finding some coolness. Okay, so this really speaks about the precarity of our existence. At some point, there will be no more water, right? And this view can really lead us to the danger of nihilism if we really think that it is just, we are just alone in this desert land that in which we cannot do nothing, just simply accepting that there is no water anymore. Well, but if the river is my interlocutor, and if I'm part of this place, right, if I'm inhabiting this place with love, we can still create some meanings together, or even dismantle other meanings that are the ones that are creating this environmental disaster, right? So I would say that we overcome this danger of nihilism about not finding meaning anymore if we can really hold how words and meanings are co-created. And the problem in this regard of this dried river has to do with is a relational problem that in which we cannot inhabit anymore certain places with love and responsibility and care then, right? So here I would say this is one thesis that I would like to put forth, that is vulnerability comes from interdependence, but interdependence is also what can make vulnerability a positive spark for listening to the others more. So instead of really finding yourself alone in front of this river without water, is really trying to listen in to the river more and see what I can do, not alone, also with the others. And what can I do also for dismantle certain words that, for example, deny that there is a climate crisis undergone. So, and here is the last point. So I take the last 10 minutes for talking about this, and is this need to listening more. So I would say that if really we can have this deep embeddedness in a place, we can find this strong resource enough that is listening, being open to the other and more. I would say that there is a need of listening more. And here we have an exemplar. At the beginning, you remember that I told you that in this kind of ethic, we need good exemplar. And here we have Milarepa, the great Tibetan yogi from the 12th century, who is quality is listening. You see it, right? But this was kind of his enlightened quality, but also he exhorted the other to listen. So if we read his Songs of Realization, often we find, listen, fortunate girl of a noble family, listen, and then he started to say. So it's like an exhortation to listen more, to pay more attention, to care actually, to enact your responsibility out of your sentience. And so here I really wanted to stress this need to listening more. And coming back to my experience, it was not just me who was suffering for the river. The entire place was suffering with all its inhabitants. And I can appreciate it if I listen more, if I really go beyond my only egocentric perspective and I see that there are also other beings that were inhabiting that place and that they couldn't survive anymore without water. This is the first point. The second is the need to listen in more, because there wasn't just suffering there. So if you listen more, you can also find that there is an intense aspiration to relieve suffering. In that experience, I really wanted to do something in order to make the water come back to that place. And then the third point, the cultivation of virtues. So if we listen more, we can cultivate our virtues in order to become a better person. So why should I listen more? The first point is acknowledging that I haven't listened to the place enough. So acknowledging that really we are not doing our best. So we need to listen more. The point here is more. And then why more? Because there are generative tensions. So it couldn't be easy to listen to a river, right? We do not, maybe we don't share a common language, right? There could be something that we cannot understand. So I need to listen to the other more because we are different. There is this space in between, as the one that I stressed when I said, I love to you, you are not me. So I need to listen more. And also, as I said, we need to listen more to break down certain words. So that's why listening more is not just an ethical opportunity, but it is an ethical responsibility. If we take responsibility as answerability, right? So answering to somebody who is calling us, we need to listen more. And I would say that listening more, as I described it before, that emerged out of this possibility of inhabiting a place with love, is starting to become a privilege, right? Because there are also many people that are banished from their land, that they cannot live anymore in their place. And this will be even more difficult with the times that will come, with the climate crisis. Remember my question, where have the fish gone? So I really needed to listen to the place even more right now. So again, remember that this inactive ethics is really situated in the real time, right? So now that there is no water, we need to listen more. And now I started to use we instead of I. Maybe you noticed my word choice throughout the presentation. I stressed the I because I didn't want to be prescriptive, right? As the usual ethics that prescribe some universal principle, but starting from my personal experience as grounding our ethical concerns. But if we will really get to this participatory dimension of sense making, we immediately see that this I became a we. So listening more cannot be an individual responsibility. And this means that we need to engage in community-based local interventions so we can really get to the political value of listening more. And here again, what does listening more imply? Since I don't have much time left now, I just want to say that, well, implies that you do all you can without limitations. And so really being also with these non-human beings that maybe you think that are not sentient, that they cannot answer to you, but if you start to move mountains, rivers, and earth, as well as the sun, the moon, and stars to practice, they in turn move you to practice. So something will happen if you start to inhabit a place, if you start to listen to the river, to the trees, and all the beings that inhabit this place. And this also implies that the forms of responsibility I'm talking about is very intimate. So I would say that this is a form of intimate compassion or care. That means that you can love each and all, you know, because in this kind of extending from the I to the we, through bigger shared words, we can really try to extend this listening, this ability to listen more to everybody. But this extension does not mean indifference, right? And here we have a quote from a Jewish intellectual victim of the Holocaust that I really would like to read you because I think that is very significant for what I'm telling you now, but I just need another 3-4 minutes. So why not turn the love that cannot be bestowed on another or on the other sex into a force that benefits the whole community and that might still be love? And if we attempt that transformation, are we not standing on the solid ground of the real world, of reality? A reality as tangible as a bed with a man or a woman in it. So here we can find this extension of love that is still love. So that's why we can keep these intimacies, this closeness with this extension. When it becomes a force, and this force of transformation here can sound a bit strange maybe to some inactive ears, but I think that it makes sense. That they say that standing on the solid ground of the real world, of reality. But what is this real world of reality? It's really a bed with a man or woman in it. So again, it is not just, we are not just in this world of projections that the other is not there anymore, right? In its tangible dimension, in its embodiment is there and is calling me. And this is real. This is the situatedness. It's the world that I inhabit. And I can change it, of course. It's flexible. We can transform together through love, this force that can benefit the whole community. But this solid ground of the embodied dimension of existence is calling us, is calling to enact our responsibility towards each other. So I would end my presentation with this quote from Francisco Varela, again from this book, where he's speaking about this spontaneous compassion, this spontaneous care or compassion. And remember, again, this combination of spontaneity and training, right? So Francisco said, it is not derived from an axiomatic ethical system or even from pragmatic moral injunctions. Its highest aspiration is to be responsive to the needs of the particular situation. So this is our responsibility. This is this intimate care. And this authentic care resides at the very ground of being and can be fully manifest in a sustained, successful ethical training. So there is this training, and it comes out from this very ground of being, of reality, this reality that we inhabit together, right? And our embodiment, I would say. So conclusion, I would really like to stress that we need to listen more, and through this practice of listening to the place, to the others, to yourself more, we can really enact our responsibility out of our shared sentience. And so in this way, we can strive for the creation of participatory worlds, where the well-being of each and all the places in the art is the first and foremost of their values. So we are keep holding values, right? So we are not in this nihilistic world in which there are no values anymore because there is not a world out there. But in co-creating worlds and ourselves, we enact our values. And the point is doing this responsibly, doing this in the best manner we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Laura. Thank you very much, Laura. And now I'd like to ask Amy Varela to give us a few minutes of response. We're running a little late, not terribly, but a little late. So, all right, Roshi says we're fine. So whatever the Roshi says goes. So we'll have your response, Amy, and then we'll have a more open conversation with all of our participants and hopefully some time for questions from the audience. Take it away, Amy.
Thank you, John. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Hi, Laura. That was breathtaking. It's just beautiful what you have to say, and that's my first response. And there's so much there, and I absolutely love the way that you put together the experiential your I and bring it forward and forth to the we. I think that that's really extraordinary, and you're taking Francisco and others' thoughts, Matthews, Weber, de Jager, de Palo, and treating it delicately and pushing it forward in a way that really is extraordinary, very extraordinary. And one thing that came to my mind, and there's so much to say about it that I would need a whole nother hour, but is Francisco at one point, he was talking about something different, but he said, he was talking about the war in Chile, the coup d'etat in Chile. He said, epistemology matters. So how you conceive of knowledge, how you conceive of the nature of knowledge, the grounds of knowledge, the limitations of knowledge has practical and ethical consequences. And so that, it seems to me, is the link between inaction and activism. And that there's an intrinsic ethical in this biology that we're talking about, and we can say the word biology, I think, that's inactive and participatory. We're seeing that there can be a biology with an intrinsic ethics, as opposed to classical scientific visions of the world and of life that objectify, take it at a distance, and so this is what I think makes this biology and this philosophy so different and so interesting. And you expanded it and are expanding it in an extraordinary way, taking the mind out of the head, away from being the exclusive domain of the brain and into the body with embeddedness and situatedness, not only into the in-between, but to the all around. So we're not just interdependent with those that are sitting in the same set of boxes or rooms as we are, but we are also responsible, call and response. I love that metaphor to what is around us, even far, far away. So you're making this case that from the very start, we're involved intimately, touched and concerned by our ecosystems, and those ecosystems concern others as well. That our knowledge is not neutral and objective, but emerges from our embeddedness in them. And finally, you're telling us that the condition for the flourishing of all is to practice and cultivate this intimacy. And this reminds me of a beautiful term from your friend, our friend, Hannah de Jager, which is that inaction is an engaged and an engaging epistemology. While you were talking, I remembered and managed to look it up, a quote by Hannah Arendt. She says, Hannah Arendt, another philosopher from the 20th century, understanding, as distinguished from having correct information and scientific knowledge, is a complicated process which never produces unequivocal results. It is an unending activity by which, in constant change and variation, we come to terms with and reconcile ourselves to reality, that is, to learn to be at home in the world. So this understanding as a constant, unending activity echoes your idea of the subject, the person, as being constantly and incessantly becoming. So not a fixed thing. You cited Francisco about this, but it's something, and Ezekiel and Hannah also write about this, as in a state of becoming. And I'm wondering, particularly, I think it's an important question because we're concerned with situated subjects. What you think about the notion that if the subject is constantly in movement, is constantly becoming in relationship to these worlds, how does this affect the relationship, the subject-object dichotomy? Can we say that there no longer exists a pure objectivity, but only a kind of subjective objectivity? And I'm asking this question by design also because as a therapist and as a psychoanalyst, what we do is constantly becoming. I think if there are therapists who are listening, we all know that what we are is what we do, and what we are is constantly evolving, so that we can make objective statements about the things that we're seeing and what we're listening to, but they're always against a background of subjectivity. So I was wondering if this evokes something for you in relationship, say, to therapy.
Thank you very much, Amy. Really, I have a lot to say, but I cannot take much time. I know I'm aware of it. And yes, really fabulous. And thank you also for what you said at the beginning. Yes, you really moved me. Thank you. But I just stick to your question. And so I would say that, yes, of course, we are in this constant process of becoming and transforming ourselves through the relationship with others and the world that we inhabit. And in my presentation, I wanted to stress how this transformation can be a process of growing. So growing out of a situation. So giving a direction to this process of becoming or transformation. This direction is really given by this aspiration to be better. That's why I was referring to this exemplarism or perfectionism tradition in ethics, right? And in a way, I think that is also related to what Francisco said about teleology, right? So this end, there is a development. So it is not just becoming, but the point is that the end could be right now, right? As this aspiration. So it is not just out there in the future that maybe at some point I will reach this final end, but it's really enacting day by day through this process of transformation. So I will say that this as very important therapeutic implications, right? Because as you said, in a therapeutic relationship that is very much also through participatory sense-making, right? So to try to remake our relationship to a narrative, to a situation that in certain situations that we need also to break certain narratives because they are not helpful for us. And this really induces a process of self-making, right? So we can also speak about self-making into this process of therapeutic intervention. So I would say yes, and this really helps us again to going beyond this dualistic view of subject-object or this kind of fixed self that are there. But if we in a way are aware of this constant transformation, we can give a direction also with the help of others, a therapist, of our friends, or a river, or a practice, right? In order to change, to shape our transformation in a certain manner. So I like the expression subjective objectivity very much. And I think that we can also use a kind of poetic objectivity. And this comes from Andreas Weber. This is his word, right? So in a way that this objectivity is created, is out of this act of co-creation, right? So in this way, we can say that remaking ourselves, we are also remaking the situation we are living in. So really, we can have this space of transformation and really believe in that something can be changed, right? Because another problem of this view of the self and fixed comes with an attitude of complaining and the fact that you cannot do anything, right? And so also my call for listening more is really grounded in this really creative dimension that can really transform the situation and yourself, because we are flexible and we are in this process of becoming. So I think that, of course, there are some important works also on enactive psychiatry, and some new special issues are coming out very, very soon, also with implication to mental health and well-being, etc. But I would say that yes, epistemology matters, and so in order to do it, we needed to change our epistemologies, as you said at the beginning, right? And so get rid of this dualistic assumption and working with this other epistemology that are more engaging, embodied, and embedded, trying to really reframe also our practices. I would say that. Maybe I spoke too much. Sorry.
Thank you.
No, not at all.
John, do I have time to ask one more question?
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Thanks. So what I wanted to evoke a little bit more from you about was about this question of the bond. So my bond with my place, that I've become native to, and it has become native to me. And I wondered, I read you, well, I was wondering about this notion of how you see my relationship to my place as affecting your relationship to your place. And how can, for example, in activist contexts, can this notion of my bond with my place be extended to your bond with your place and everybody on the screen's bond with their place, and how you yes. I thought a little bit, it reminded me a little bit of meta practice when I read a couple of things that you So I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit.
Oh, yes, thank you, Amy. This is very helpful because it allows me to say something that is really important to me. Because, you know, when we say that, yes, I needed to inhabit my place with love, just my home, this could be also very risky, right? Because it can become a sort of responsibility only towards my place or only towards the other beings that inhabit that specific place. And I'm blind towards all the other places, right? That's why we really need to open our eyes to this all around. So not only the in-between, that I care for my river because it's my river, that this would be another form of possession out of love, right? So not a sort of objectifying relation, but just caring about the river because it's my river, right? And so I argued in a paper that through love in a place, so really being there, I can extend my love to the earth. So the point, this is one important point of environmental ethics, right? Why we need the universal principles? Because we need to care for the entire earth, right? We need to go beyond all our particular concerns only about our places. I try to reverse the way and say we can start from our own existential concerns, from our first person experience, and from there, if we listen more, we expand and we see that there are other people that are caring about their places. And so we can connect. Again, I'm not alone. There are many other people who are caring for their places. And so try to think about this more open network of people who are caring for their places as an instantiation of the earth, right? Because a place, a land, is where we can also say the earth unfolds, right? So maybe my home will be different from your home. Maybe I like, I don't know, red furniture, you like white furniture. There will be idiosyncrasies, but still it is home. It is our home. Maybe we are not living together in the same place, but the earth is our shared home. So I will speak about this sort of activism that is really grounded on interdependence and our shared vulnerability, right? So that we are together here. And so thinking really about this sort of making better worlds together. So really this networking activism, as we can call, as a sort of participatory world making, in order to really restore a form of relationship with our place that is ecological and not exploitative or other sorts, because you know the problem of the climate crisis as out of our relational problem because we connect to it anymore. So my answer is really connecting with all the other people who are caring for their lands, and also being aware that there are people who do not have their lands anymore. So this was really important for me, that I don't want that this ethics became some sort of privilege only for the people who possess a home, because it seems that already now, but also in the times to come, there will be even harder to really having a home, having a river, as I call it here now. So really caring also and connecting also to the people who do not have the privilege of having this home, but working with them and for them as well. So I think that this concept of feeling at home should be go also with the idea of displacement, so that we are very much displaced. And so going deeper into it, and since we are displaced and we are going to be even more displaced in the future, we really need to listen to the place more now and connect.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. So, Melissa, yes? I think we'll just do, maybe Melissa can come on up, and I think we'll just see who has something to say. I have a small question myself, maybe others And then maybe perhaps there'll be time to turn it over to the audience. There you go.
Laura, thank you. Can I hold it?
Hi, Melissa.
Thank you so
Hi.
much. That was beautiful. Great to see you. And Amy, wonderful to see you. Thank you for your questions. I have so many responses, but I do have time after lunch, and I actually wanted to invite everyone on the call and everyone present here, before my talk so beautifully and developing this bond to land, to go out and listen to a place, a spot on the land, your backyard, a neighborhood, wherever it is. Here we have the opportunity of the beautiful gardens in this sacred space, and to hold a piece of earth. It could be a stone, a rock. Pick up a handful of soil, of dirt. It will relate to my story about muskrat. So that is an invitation for intimacy with the more than human world. Miigwech, thank you.
What a great opportunity for an exercise. That's fantastic. Let me ask one question to Laura, and then perhaps we'll see if there's a little time for us to open it up more. So one question I have, Laura, for you is I'm really interested in the role that feeling is playing, a kind of foundational role in your ethics, and I think it might be valuable to give you an opportunity to unpack that a little bit. So here's a sort of concern I might have. Disgust is an especially interesting example in this context. So that, you know, with family members who are transgender, there have been a lot of legal activity lately, passing laws against, you know, transgender treatments, especially for minors and so on. And it is certainly the case that, and I think experimentally the case, that there are individuals, maybe many of them possibly in the United States, where if they see a transgender person, or maybe if they see a same-sex couple, they experience disgust. And the disgust is telling them this is wrong. And they're being completely honest about their feelings. They're not, you know, they're not kind of generating it or making it up or making an effort. They have maybe lived with a certain story or a certain kind of conditioning or whatever you might say. But whatever the reason is, that's an authentic experience for them. And the question then is, do we just trust? So I am a little concerned about the idea of just sort of taking my feelings as a foundation for my ethics, partially because in the Buddhist context, sometimes we're really challenged to question our feeling. It feels right, but it's not. So that's what I just wanted to see how you would respond there.
Yes, thank you, John. It's very important. And again, it allows me to explain my position better. So I would not say that the feelings per se, the foundation of this ethics, right? But I would say that embodiment, and I give a kind of deep sense to embodiment, right? So not just the physical body, but our fundamental existential dimension, right? So also vulnerability and precarity are a component of this strong view of embodiment, right? And being alive. So I would not say that our feelings per se, because I agree with you that just, you know, what you say, authentic feelings or authentic passions as disgust could be really put in the wrong place and making us doing the worst choices, right? If I build my political agenda out of this disgust, this would be a terrible world that I'm creating, right? So I really wanted to stress this cultivation of sentience, right? So I think that we have this ability. So I take sentience and this ability to feel pleasure and pain. I don't like to say just pleasure and pain, because this is still too dualistic. So I would really like to nuance the view. And there are so much complex and ambivalent feelings, but well, just say this ability. But since it is an ability, we need to cultivate it, to train it. And how we do it, as I say, we can have some exemplars, but we can also work with our aspiration. And the aspiration there should be really something that is moved by the well-being of everyone and everybody, right? So I would say that there are certain feelings that are negative, but not negative just because they feel bad, so the affective balance, but they are ethically negative. So we needed to be aware of it and transform ourselves. So, but this does not mean to just enact a rationalist ethics. So since there are some feelings that per se are not good, so then we need to become detached, abstract, and whatever. No, we can cultivate our sensibility, right? And become, thanks to it, a better person. And I think that this will be also more natural, right? Because also the ontology is a great ethical view, Kant, you know, that we need to be moved by our moral imperatives. But how hard it is, because it goes against our nature, it seems. So here we really can build upon our nature, about our sentience, and making it something that can be good for everybody, right? So there is more continuity. I would say that, you know, foreign action is very important, this continuity between life and mind. Here I would say this kind of continuity between life and heart, ethics, good feelings, right? So we can work through it and build this continuity in a more natural manner and build this spontaneity, right? So Francisco Varela speaks about spontaneity. I think that we really need to understand that this spontaneity is cultivated. We need to work for it. We need years to get there. And maybe we will never go there. But actually, there are some people, some wise men, some exemplars, Milarepa, that can inspire us. And so we can try to do the same together.
Thank you. That's really, and there's so much we could say. I want to see now if there might be some online folks. I see Al here.
Yeah, thank you, John. You know, this is from the online participants and really follows on to what Laura has just said, but also makes contact with your presentation, John, and with Richie and Amy's commentary after the presentations. So this is something posed by Marika van Vught, and she asks, when do contemplative practices lead to ethical know-how? Do they always do so, or under what constraints? And then Jana Macedo, I hope I'm not mispronouncing that, adds to it, if different contemplative practices lead to different responsiveness or knowing spontaneity.
Well, I think that I'm not the best person to answer into this question, but I would say that there are different contemplative practices. Luckily, we have so many, 84,000 maybe, upaya, skillful means, etc. And I would stress that, well, if we have to choose which one, let's try to choose one that can really develop also our ethical know-how, right? In order to become better person. So through the bodhisattva path, for example, right?
And actually here, Laura, that idea of the exemplar, where there is actually a kind of life, where there's the living of the life as a practice, an exemplary life, a kind of style, not just a style of philosophy, but a style of being a person. I think that's a style of practice that's really relevant here. I'll also say, I mean, it's very important for us to acknowledge that contemplative practices, some of them can also be used to manipulate people, and that, you know, the outcomes can be quite negative. So it's not just the case that, you know, we take any, whether that applies to all practices, I think is an open question. I would say probably not, but there's a wide range of practices that can be used actually to not help people get out of their story, but actually to reinforce a particular story that's about power and domination, for example. So it's not all just a level playing field, perhaps. You want to say anything, Richie, on that? Yeah, if Richie's just saying, if you can't hear, he would agree that, yeah, there's a variety. Al, do we have anything else from online, or do we have anything here in this room?
Actually, we have to conclude.
All right, very good. So maybe we'll call it, we'll take a break for now. Thank you so much, Laura and Amy, for a really wonderful session together. It was really fantastic. We'll have some more time for discussion, including our online folks. It might get a bit late for those of you in Europe, but there will be time later this afternoon. We're going to take a break for the next hour and a half.
Will be with
So Melissa Nelson will be on this afternoon, followed by Molly Crockett. And, you know, we're building a world here, as I think you're beginning to get a sense of. So even if it is rather late for those of us or those of you in Europe, I hope you can persist. And if not, of course, the Zoom recordings will be online. And John, thank you so much. And Laura, that was extraordinary. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Have a good break.